Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about making a realistic mountain in Blender because they're kind of hard. So let's get started. Okay, so to start things off, we have this cube. I'm just going to delete this cube. And what we're going to add is, this is a preferences or an add-on. You're going to press edit, preferences, and then you're going to search landscape. And this is the add-on. I have it enabled already. But if you just press the check, it's add mesh ANT landscape. So now that you have that enabled, you can now go up to here to add mesh landscape. And if you press down here, you can see we have a whole bunch of different things we can make our landscape into. So that what this does is it takes a plane and it takes modifiers and textures and uses them to make different noises that kind of look like mountains. So what we're going to be using is just what it starts with, and we can kind of change a couple of these things in the settings. So down here, let me zoom in, the resolution or the subdivision can be changed up. So if you click on it and then drag it down, you now have both of them selected, and you can change the number to something like, I'm gonna go with 290. And this might take a second to load. But if you see and zoom in here, it's got better subdivision and it's looking great. So now I'm going to come down here and you can change your mesh size. Kind of stretches it out though. Actually, that was the wrong one, sorry. I meant down here at the mesh size. You can change it to mean a bigger mesh or smaller mesh. I'm just going to go with the 2, which is the size, the default size. And I'm pretty sure this is all the settings we have to mess with for this render. It's going to be close up on the mountain, right about here. On this mountain, it's going to be closed up. So yeah, this is all we need to really mess around with. Okay, so now we are going to have to go to the shading tab. Okay, so now that we have our mountain, we can now go to the viewport shading, and we are going to change this to cycles. And then I am also going to change the HDR, or add an HDR as I should say. So to add an HDR, you go down to here, and under color you can add in a environment texture, open, and I'm going to get an HDR which I got off of Polygon. This is going to be the HDR Snow Mountain Evening. So now that I have that HDR open, I can delete my light. Delete. And this is what my mountain's looking like. We can change the HDR by going down here to the object and go to world. Neutral. You can bring up the strength to about a 3. And this just brings the strength up. Probably 5 maybe. I don't know, something kind of light. And then you can add in a mapping node. Mapping. Put the vector into the vector and add in a input texture coordinate. Put the normal into the vector. And it looks like my rotation is off, so I need to rotate it on the Y 90 degrees. That was the location, sorry. Rotation 90. Sorry, 180. There we go. And now it's set to what it should be looking like. I can rotate this by pressing R on top view and rotate it to about there. So now you can see that the light is coming in and it's kind of casting shadows on those inner parts, and it's looking really cool. The next thing I'm going to do is on the world. I'm also going to take it up just a little bit, probably to like a 7, just to make it a little bit brighter. And then I'm also going to bring down the HDR. So on the Z location, I can just bring the HDR up. Let me put the 0. I'm going to hide my landscape so I see what I'm doing. I'm going to go with the 0.8. That's a little too much. 0.4. That is a pretty good number. So once you get your HDR all set the way you want it to, you can now start on the texturing. So now I can switch back to object down here, and for this I'm going to press Control to zoom out. I'm going to have my mountain selected, and I'm going to move this material output, Control to zoom back in, take this principal BSDF, go Shift D to move it down here. This just duplicates it. And next, you may be wondering, like, well, I want 2 textures, the snow and the dirt, to be on my mountain, but when I plug both of them into the surface, it only goes to one or the other. So the way of making them both mix together is by going Shift A, add in a shader, and this is going to be a mix shader. You can just drop that right into there and then put the BSDF into the shader. And this here, I'm going to change the color of this one to be like black. You can see that it kind of changes the color, or makes it kind of a blend of each color, because if I unplug this shader, it gets lighter, and if I unplug this shader, it gets darker. And so this is great, but you want it to be globby around your whole mountain, starting at the top, maybe having more snow, and then going down less snow. The way we can make this work is we go Shift A, add in a converter color ramp, bring it up here, put the color into the fact, and then you go Shift A, add in an input geometry. You're going to put the pointiness into the fact, and now if we go Control Shift right click on our color ramp, which by the way is a add-on. So in Edit Preferences, this is the Node Wrangler add-on, node. So I enabled the Node Wrangler, sorry, and that just makes me Control Shift and click on this color ramp, and it makes me show what's going on. So if I move these in, you can see that the white is snow, and in the crevices there's going to be some dirt. So now if I Control Shift click on my shader, my mix shader, and it looks like I did this the opposite. So white, and then this one is going to be black. Now you can see if I zoom out, there's some snow on the top of the mountain and some dark in the crevices. And of course this doesn't really look like snow because it is not wrong one. It is not the right textures, and the snow is white and the base color for the dirt is black, and that's not what they look like. And you might have to take some of this stuff down, like the color ramp. Maybe you want there to be more snow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding in a image texture for each of these. I have two images that I screenshotted. One is rock and one is snow, and that will work perfectly. So for this snow, I'm going to go Shift A, add in a texture, image texture. In the image texture, I'm going to put the color into the base color, and then open a snow texture. And right now it doesn't really look like snow, and the reason for that is because I haven't unwrapped it yet. And you'll see it a little bit more in the rock one. So Shift D, move it over here, put the color into base color, and I just opened up another image that is a rock image, and I don't know, it looks legit, but I'm not seeing much rock coming out here. So now the reason that it is acting kind of weird like that is because it is not unwrapped. So I'm going to select my mountain, and I'm going to go to edit mode. I'll probably go to UV editing first off, and then in edit mode I selected everything, and I'm going to go U unwrap. This might take a second because there's a lot of vertices, so just give it its time to load. Okay, once that has unwrapped, you can see it on the other side here. You can just press A to select everything and scale it by pressing S to scale it up so you have your rock distributed on your mountain. Ta-da! Rocky Mountains. I can probably make this a little bit more big. So I'm scaling it up even more. So much rock. Okay. Now I go back to shading, and I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to bring in more snow because I'm feeling like that today. Fun fact about me, I have never really experienced snow before. I live in California, and it never snows. And I went to Ohio when I was 2 and I experienced it, I guess. But I don't remember that at all, so I guess you could say I'm experiencing it now. I feel like I'm a lot warmer than I should be. So I'm just tweaking some of the snow so it looks correct to my idea of what snow looks like, I guess, because now that my secret's been out, you now know that I've never experienced snow in my life. Okay, moving on. So now I'm going to add in a texture so that the rock is affecting our lighting. So I'm going to take my image texture here, and I'm going to Shift D and move it down here. and connect the color into the normal, which is not going to look right, just so everybody knows. Now I'm going to add in a vector bump and just put it in the middle here. Make sure that the color is going into the height and not the normal. And then lastly, you need to add in an input texture coordinate and choose object. And now, we zoom in here, wait for it to load. You can see how it is affecting our lighting. Just a little tiny bit, which is perfect. Now I'm going to add in some texture to the snow. So I just, oh wait, forgot to mention something very important. The strength should not be this high. The strength should be turned down to about a 0. Strength actually might be good. Let's try 0.5 and see what that looks like. It's pretty good for a rock texture, I think. Now, onto the next part, which is the snow. You can just duplicate all of this, Shift-D, and move it up here. And then plug the normal into the normal. So simple! And then you're probably going to want to change that to be your snow texture. And that's pretty much how you make your snow bumpy. You can see it affecting our lighting. It might be a little bit too much. So, all I'm going to do is change the strength to be 0.04. And that's just a little bit of strength, so it's kind of affecting our lighting just a little bit. Not as much as the rock, but still some. And lastly, I'm going to turn up the reflection, or the roughness, down to about there. And then the rock roughness is going to be turned up, because rocks are more rough than snow. So this is a pretty good mountain if you're mixing in like snow and rock, but if you want to add even like another thing to the mix, which is what we're going to be doing, I'm going to need to add grass. Okay. So, to do this, you can zoom out here, select all of the shading for the rock, press Shift-D, and just move it over here. Next thing you're going to do is select this mix shader, press Shift-D, and move it into the middle of the principal rock shader. Next, you're going to take the shader and move it into the principal PSD of your rock that you just duplicated. So I just added in a grass texture, and I'm going to do the same thing over down here. I'm just going to duplicate this, put it into there, and delete that. Object into the vector. Now we got some bumpy grass. Can't really see it, but it's there, which is great. The next thing I'm going to do is box select the color ramp and the geometry, and I'm going to go Shift-D to duplicate it, put it right about there, put the color into the fact, and it should be the same thing. Now all we have to do is figure out which is which. So Control to zoom in. White is grass and black is rock. So now I'm going to I want there to be more rock than grass. I want to make sure I see both of them. So this is probably a good start. You can see maybe a little bit of green, but not too much. Maybe move it just a little. That's probably good. And now I'm going to take my snow and I'm just going to increase it. Okay, so now we've got a pretty realistic looking mountain. And it looks like I also have just a random mix shader. Just delete that. You can now see that in the crevices there is some grass, which is perfect. You might want to have, zoom in here a little bit, some more rock. So I'm just going to turn up that just a bit, and then yeah, so this is looking great. Another thing that will just boost your realism is if we do one more pretty cool thing. This is a tip for making mist, which I'm just going to add really quickly. It'll be great. Okay, so add in a mesh cube. Zoom out here. Press SZ to scale it on the Z. GZ to move it up on the Z. And then you can go with a new texture. Zoom out. Control. By holding Control, I'm going to take away this principal BSDF, so just delete it. And then I'm going to add in a shader emission. And I'm going to plug the emission into the volume. Not the surface, the volume. And this is very important, because now it's a little high, but you can see that there is mist coming through. We can change this down to about a 0.04 maybe, probably even less, but it just kind of adds mist. Or you can kind of position this, get it in the right place for you, and maybe turn the strength down. Maybe just a little bit of mist. Works great. Okay, so yeah, this is probably a good number. A 0.02, and this will increase your render time a little bit, but at least you got some mist to show that your mountain is pretty big. And obviously you might want to brighten up your world. Under the world settings, I'll go with a 9 actually. And then I'm going to move it down on the location, the Z, and move it down to a 0.5. That's just so that my sky stays in the sky. So that my mountain is like in the sky, not closer to the ground. And now if we zoom up here, we can start positioning our camera to be a kind of a good view. So take our camera, and we're going to go to View, Navigation, Walk. And now you can press, it's kind of like a video game. I've never played a video game, but that's what people say. You can press S to zoom in or zoom out, W to go closer in, D to move sideways, and just find a good view. Q to go down, W to go forward, Q to go down, E to go up, and find a good view that works for you. You might have to adjust some of this mist so that it kind of just looks kind of smoother. Again, you can go into your object and tweak it. Another thing you can do to add more realism to your mist is you can add in a texture noise texture. So Shift A, sorry, texture noise texture. You can plug the fact into the strength, and you're going to need to take this scale down and the roughness, distortion, all these things down so that it's not, you could take this down too. So just change the color down so that you can barely see it, but it's still there. So I just scaled the mountain up, and it's working pretty good for me. So I'm actually going to change the world to be a little bit brighter. I know I keep doing this, but it's not getting bright enough for me. I'm going to try 100 just as a tester, as an experiment. Honestly, you probably could do a 100. I'm going to change it down to maybe a 50. That 50 looks better to me. And then you could even increase the mist. So now we've got a more misty image. That's going to be my render image. Now, while this is rendering, we can kind of talk a little bit about blending the textures together to create your final look. So you can use this mountain as a part of a landscape or anything cool like that. You could probably use this as in a scene for the background or anything. So yeah, that pretty much finishes up our video. The render looks like this now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.